What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the FPL Gameweek 34 preview. So lots to go through, as you might imagine, as we get to the business end of the season. There's mini leagues to win, there's ranks to increase, as there always is, but you haven't got much more time left to do it. So we're going to look at end of season differentials, we're going to look at the blanks and doubles stuff again, but also talk about what to do with your transfers this week. Should you save, should you use it, when to use free hit, 35 versus 36 or whatever it might be. It's all covered in this video. So if you do enjoy it, please do give it a like. Keep hitting that subscribe button. I'm going to put up a notification here when I edit this video to show you how many subscribers are on at the time of editing. Very close to the 150k now. This is the last big push for the rest of this season at least. So please do subscribe if you've been enjoying the content either recently or for the whole season. For whatever reason you haven't, clicked that button and I will jump into it. So I know some people will be sick of this by now because it's like talking about what could happen. Is Ben right? When will it happen? When will we get announcements? But it is quite big potential news for us, and there has been a tiny update this week in that we know that the Premier League are gonna and the government basically are going to try and get fans into stadiums for the last couple of game weeks of the season, right? So as Ben's saying there, Wolves tweeted yesterday that they are letting fans apply for tickets for the last game week 38. Now, some of the fixtures will have to be moved to allow all teams to get a home game in the last couple of game weeks, and then to do with FA Cup and stuff, that is why the fixtures move. To be honest, we don't need to go into great detail about why the fixtures are moving for two reasons. One, I'm not sure I even fully understand it. And two, all we really need to know is who's moving and where. Now, there are a couple of different permutations that Ben has talked about. He's talked about where there could be only 4 matches in game week 36 and that game week 37 will be a massive double. But this that I've got on screen is how he thinks it will go, right? Now, this is all down to whether FPL change the deadlines. And again, I'm not going to get massively into that. But if they change the deadlines, then we could see a situation where 8 teams double in game week 35 and then 4 of them blank in game week 36. So the 4 that wouldn't blank but would also double are, again, Villa, Palace, Everton, Southampton, same as I talked about last week. And then the ones that would double are Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester, Man United, but then they would blank in game week 36. So obviously, you can see there on screen, Man United's fixtures in 35 would be Villa away, which is their game week 35 fixture anyway, plus Leicester at home. So that Leicester match from 36 would move. And it's all to do with the deadlines changing and stuff like that. Again, not going to go massively into it right now. So one question or quite a few questions came up about this. Right, one was trying to obviously talk through the kind of mess, the mess that Ben has been talking about. Not that he has created a mess, but it feels like a bit of a mess when you try and get your head around it. Like, one thing for me is, if you've got players that have got potential doubles in 35, like we're going to talk about Bruno Fernandes later, I would strongly consider keeping him, because if he has a double and you've got rid of him, then you've got to get him back. And then you've got to maybe deal with other potential transfers, double stuff, blank, or whatever it might be. So again, I'm kind of getting forward a bit from later on in the video, but Fernandes to Son, for example, I would rather do that in 36 than necessarily in 34, right? What to do with your transfers, though? So some people will be thinking about the free hit. Now, I'll come on to 35 versus 36 in a minute. But if you're thinking about doing it in 35, so that's my strategy. I've talked about that for the last, 2, 3, 4 weeks. If I'm free hitting in 35, then this week in 34, I ideally need to use a transfer. The problem is we don't know when this is going to be officially announced. It could be before the deadline. It could be after the game week 34 deadline. We could get hardly any notice at all. We just don't know. But I am considering just gambling and using my transfer regardless and just plan ahead. So for me, for example, it would be to take out possibly one of my Chelsea defenders, or my only Chelsea defender, because they blank in 36, and using a transfer to prepare for the rest of the season. So if you haven't got a big transfer to use and you are thinking of free hitting in 35, you ideally want to do something that's going to work for the rest of the season, because if you don't use your transfer this week and then you free hit in 35, you will lose that extra transfer. So you won't have 2 after 35. You'll only have 1, right? So ideally, you kind of want to use it. If you're not free hitting, then ideally you probably want to roll this week and go into next week with 2 free transfers. Obviously, when you're planning your team, you need to start thinking about what you're going to do with Chelsea, Leicester, Arsenal, and Man United players, because obviously you can bench some, but some players like Fernandes, for example, hold a lot of value in your team. What do you want to do with him? And you can look at this to see the fixtures afterwards for Man United will be Fulham and Wolves. We're going to talk about Europa League rotation and stuff like that in just a minute. free hit 35 versus 36. There's no right or wrong answer here. This is going to depend on your team setup. So again, I'll use my own team as an example. I have 3 players from Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester, and Man United, right? So it's Iheanacho, Jamie Vardy, and Rudiger. So if I use my transfer this week to get rid of Rudiger, I've only got 2, Vardy and Iheanacho. So when I get to 36, I'm not really in a lot of trouble. I can use my transfer on Vardy to Bamford or Vardy to Calvert-Lewin, whoever it might be at the time. And then I've only got Iheanacho and I'll just bench him anyway. So it's not really much of an issue. So game week 36 is not going to be a problem. Most of the players I've got now for 36 have got good fixtures. So triple Liverpool, for example, have West Brom away. So I'll get them back. I'm happy with that. I'm trying to think who, and obviously Leicester I will deal with, and I'll have dealt with my Chelsea player as well. So I'm not really in too much of a bother. Like Spurs as well play Wolves at home, then Villa at home in 36-37. I'm happy to keep Kane and Son for that. So for me, it makes a lot more sense to go for the free hit in 35 because I've got only 1 Villa player. I've got no Crystal Palace players. Now, don't laugh, but they've got a really good double game week, so I might want to take a punt on Zaha, whoever it might be. Everton have got good fixtures, but they're not really a priority for me. So again, getting them in for the double could be good. And again, I've got no Man United players, and I don't want to bring Fernandes in against Liverpool, so I can go without him and then free hit him in, and then he blanks, so I don't need him anyway. So for me, there's a lot of value in free hitting in 35. It's going to depend on your team. If you've got a load of game week 35 players already who are potentially going to double, then maybe the free hit in 36 to avoid the blank is better for you. I'm not going to say which way is right or wrong. It's up to you. But there's a lot of value. A lot of people are going to have double game week players already, Leicester, Man United, etc. So the value of the free hit's kind of diminished. But where the real value comes is in 36 because you can plan now for that, or at least gamble on planning now for that. And then obviously people in game week 36 will be scrambling to get rid of players that are blanking. You won't need to worry about that because you've just free hit and they're all back out of the side. So that's kind of the last big point on that. I'll just touch on how many double game week players. Again, like I think everyone's going to have Vardy and Iheanacho, I think. So that's 2. Fernandes is another one, that's 3. Possibly Martinez in goal is 4, although I know a lot of people got rid of him, so maybe they'll go for Mendy in goal as well. I mean, outside of that, if you've not got the free hit, you might not want to load up too heavily. Maybe a couple of Everton players, possibly like a defender, but I wouldn't be too confident on clean sheets there. So yeah, how many is always going to depend on the quality of the player. What I will say for non-free hitters is Spurs against Leeds away and Liverpool against Southampton at home are both good fixtures. So you've kind of been saved is the wrong word, but yeah, a little bit saved because even if you haven't got a full amount of double game week players, you've got some really good single game week players where you shouldn't be kind of hurt too much by those of us that kept the free hit. So that's what Ben thinks is going to happen. It's basically the same thing as I spoke about last week. We still don't know. Got no idea when it's going to be announced. Hopefully before the game week 34 deadline, but we just don't know. But I would potentially gamble if you've got the free hit and you're thinking of using it in 35 on your transfer in 34. That's what I'm thinking of doing. I haven't quite decided, but I'll talk about that a bit more tomorrow. So I think a lot of when people are thinking about getting rid of players, they're also thinking about rotation concerns, right? So this is the last 8 kind of game weeks, if you want to call it like that, including non-FPL, that these 4 teams have that are still in Europe. So Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, and Man United. Now, on the far right, you'll see that I've put blanks for all teams apart from Chelsea. That's just because midweek they play the FA Cup final. So we might have to think about that with Leicester. The only thing with Leicester is the fixtures for the last 3 game weeks are not great. They might blank in 36 as well. And then in between 37 and 38, they've got the FA Cup final. So it's probably, although I think Leicester are really good now for 34, 35, after that, they can probably be gotten rid of. So think about that when you're making your transfer plans. Because I put Chelsea FA Cup in there, I just wanted to show that Man United, Arsenal, Man City will have a little bit more rest time between their 37 and their 38 fixtures. Now, there is going to be rotation around these fixtures, right? Tuchel kind of said that West Ham, you know, the team he put out felt like it was the team that he wanted to play against Real Madrid. He put Azpilicueta to right wing back, which he hadn't done before, I don't think, until that West Ham game. Then he did the same against Real Madrid. So you've got to think there's going to be some rotation. So for me, again, like I've got Rudiger, and I'm thinking of taking the gamble that he maybe gets rotated. Now, I don't think they're not going to rotate Rudiger, Azpilicueta, and like the whole defence, okay? Because one thing you've got to take into account when you're looking at these teams individually is what do they have to play for in the league? And out of all 4 of these teams, Chelsea is probably the biggest one that still has something massive to play for, which is top 4. And their fixtures are difficult. So Arsenal at home, sorry, they've got Man City away, Arsenal at home, Leicester away, before playing Leicester in the FA Cup, and then a fairly, a bit of an easier fixture to end with Villa away. But they still have top 4 in their sights, and they can't guarantee about winning the Champions League, although they're in a fairly good position to get to the final, you would think. So they got a lot to play for. So I don't see much rotation in the defence for the likes of Rudiger and Azpilicueta, etc. But you have to be prepared for it to happen. And the fixtures aren't great either after Fulham at home. So I think we can start to think about getting rid of them. The reason I say that none of the other teams have got anything to play for, because Man City are going to win the league. Man United, they would have to do something crazy to not get top 4 at this point. And I just don't think Arsenal can get top 4. So their only aim now is to win the Europa League. So for Arsenal players, it's a bit frustrating because they got great fixtures. Newcastle in between, West Brom after, and they got Crystal Palace and Brighton to come. Chelsea away is the only really difficult fixture that Arsenal have left. So for players like Saka, I think Lacazette's back now. Tierney is potentially back for the Europa League as well this week. We could start looking at them. I think from kind of after the semi-final for the rest of the season with Arsenal, you should be pretty much okay. The one thing with Man United and Arsenal is if they get through to the final is only I think it's midweek basically. So the final day of the season is Sunday, and the Europa League final is on the following Wednesday. So there's only like 3 days rest. With the Champions League, there's a whole week. So when Chelsea and Man City, if they get to the final, once they've played Villa and Everton respectively, they've got a week until the Champions League final, so there might not be so much rotation. So I would be careful with bringing in too many Arsenal players right now. I think Newcastle away is prime for rotation. With Man United, it might not be so bad just because it's Liverpool. Because Liverpool are another top 4 contender, like Bruno's going to start, I expect Rashford to start, Pogba's probably going to start that game as well. Obviously, we can take a look at who plays in the semi-final and what minutes they get in the first leg. But I don't think we're going to see too much rotation. And then same thing after the semi-final for Villa, Leicester, Fulham. So Man United have actually got some pretty good fixtures left. And if you think they're going to have a double in 35, which would be the Villa game plus the Leicester one, it might be worth keeping those players, because I just don't, even though Liverpool's not a great game, and I wouldn't expect you to think about bringing those players in if you already own them, I would possibly keep. The last one is Man City. Now, this is the most interesting because their fixtures are pretty much all green. I will say, I'm 4 minutes into recording this and I've just realised that I've put Chelsea as green. Obviously, ignore that. That is a red fixture. But outside of that, Palace, Newcastle, Brighton and Everton are all good fixtures. And once the semi-final's done, we might see players like De Bruyne and Gundogan get pretty good minutes. That Crystal Palace game is prime for rotation, right? I think the semi-final is going to be massive. I don't think it matters what their lead might be or whether they're losing or whatever. They're going to rotate in that Palace game. Players like De Bruyne and Gundogan, as usual, are going to be prime suspects for that to happen, okay? Getting into a bit of line of duty there with prime suspects. But you'd think that could happen. So if you don't already own them, I probably wouldn't bring them in. But after Chelsea, that's differential City, right? Excuse the City pun, but Newcastle, Brighton, Everton, not many people own Man City players right now, especially attackers. So I'd be looking at them because Pep's not just going to rotate all his players for the last 3 games when they've got a Champions League game a week after. He's going to want them to have good match rhythm. And I don't think we'll see as much rotation, but we've got to wait until after the Chelsea game. So I'm not Arsenal's probably the one I'm most worried about because they've got the least to lose in the league, I would say now, because they ain't going to get top 4, and Europa League is their best chance of getting back into the semi-finals. Back into the Champions League. Man United's fixtures again after the semi-final. I wouldn't expect too much rotation from the usual suspects again, like Fernandes, Rashford, etc. Man City potential differentials. Chelsea are the one. They got 2 big semi-finals. One they've already played. They got Fulham, which is a great game for them to rotate, and then they play kind of most of their full squad for the rest of the fixtures, but they're not that great. And they got the FA Cup game to go. So I'd start to be looking to offload Chelsea soon. I think you can probably keep for Fulham, depending on your transfer strategy. Like if you've got Alonso, looks like a good match that he will play in because Chilwell started last night. He's probably going to play in the next semi-final and against Man City as well. So Alonso for Fulham looks good. But outside of that, I'd be thinking about getting rid. So I wanted to talk about some end-of-season differentials, right? And people have asked me a few times about punts for the rest of the season, differentials, but the thing is, depending on where you are, like what's your goal? Are you trying to win a mini-league? Are you trying to get a better rank? How far down in the ranks you are? Will depend on how punty you need to go. So like if I was only 10 points behind in a mini-league, then I wouldn't be too concerned because there's still 5 weeks left and a 10-point gap can be overturned in just one of those weeks. So I wouldn't be looking to go completely crazy. But if you were right down in the ranks and you really just want to try and get up, some of these players could help you. But again, you've got to take into account the rotation that I've just talked about. So Lacazette, is he going to be back fit? Would he start this semi-final? If not, would he start the game in between against Newcastle? Possibly. It's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, with Chelsea, there could be some rotation, again, potentially in the attack. But Havertz didn't start the Champions League game. And therefore, he might start a bit more in the league. These percentages are top 10k ownership. And obviously, you can look lower than that. But I always like to look around here because this is the most active players. And it gives a good representation of who's quite lowly owned. So 0.33% of the top 10k own Havertz. The biggest one on here, like the biggest ownership, is Calvert-Lewin. Now, I quite like Everton fixtures. Again, I'll talk about defence in a minute, but from an attack point of view, I quite like what they've got. Right, they've still got a double to play, no blank in 36, and it's Sheffield United at home. And they are one of the teams we know will get a double. Forget all this possibilities about 35 and 36. Everton literally have a fixture to rearrange against Villa, so they've got to play Villa twice, plus Sheffield United in 36. I quite like Calvert-Lewin, depending on who else your kind of strategy is for going up. Like what your strike force is strategy. Calvert-Lewin could be a good option. Antonio should be back before the end of the season. We've all got Lingard, right? And we all know he's got good fixtures. Therefore, Antonio has the same good fixtures. And I saw ex-West Ham employee tweeting that he should be back before the end. So bearing in mind, we probably want to see a game of him getting kind of 60-plus minutes. But they are fighting for top 4. So anything they can do to get Antonio on the pitch is going to be big. 0.31%. He is such a big differential. Always good underlying stats. Always gets in the points. And with the fixtures they got, I'd certainly be looking at him. Man City, like I said, once you get that period out of the way where the Champions League's done, the Chelsea game's done, then I think De Bruyne 1.17%. That's massive. If you've still got Bruno Fernandes, right? Let's just say the 35-36 things happens, double then blank. Then in game week 36, once Chelsea is done, you could swap Fernandes to Bruno. Bruno to De Bruyne. 1.17%. That's so low. On his day, he's so good for FPL. I love that. Mane 0.9%. Obviously, a lot of people going for Jota, Salah. Great fixtures. Nothing else to play for apart from a top 4 place. If you wanted to go big and different, Mane's the one, 0.9. His stats for the whole season are so ridiculous. I don't know how he hasn't got more points, right? Maybe he's just on a bit of a finishing slump, whatever it might be. Confidence knocked, I don't know. But looking here, his non-penalty XG is 0.49 and his expected assist is 0.16. That's 0.65 altogether. That's like on the same lines as Vardy or Iheanacho. His numbers are good. At some point, he's going to go big. Is it before the end of the season? Who knows? But again, if you're looking for a big differential, it could be Mane. And Harrison, right? A lot of people have asked me about Rafinha to Harrison. Now, if Rafinha's fit, he's the better option. But Harrison in his own right, for the price he is, his stats again are really good. Like his non-penalty XG and expected assist together is per 90 minutes 0.43. So that's better than the likes of Lingard, for example. I think it's around the same as like a Saka. That's good numbers. The reason that he's been so overlooked is because Rafinha is such a good option and he's on set pieces as well. But if he wasn't fit, or if you weren't sure about him, or if you wanted to attack Leeds fixtures with a bit of a differential and just hope that, because obviously, if we're talking about a season-long play, you go for Rafinha. But over the space of like 3 or 4 games to end the season, you could just take a punt and hope that someone outscores him, right? Like Harrison for 0.69. Of course, with all these differentials, it might work out that Salah keeps smashing Mane, Rafinha keeps beating Harrison, De Bruyne doesn't play enough games, Calvert-Lewin gets outscored by Richarlison. But we're talking about the end of the season now where you might have to go big in order to get or reach your goal, of rank or min-league victory, whatever it might be. These players I would strongly look at. So I know I've already done the transfer tips video this week, but a lot of that is just talking about individual players. Should you buy, should you sell, hold on to, or whatever it might be. I got a lot of questions about specific moves this week. And again, some of them are quite big, especially involving Vardy to Kane, Vardy to Iheanacho and Bruno Fernandes. That I wanted to talk about them in their own segment. I'll try and keep it brief, right? Vardy to Kane is a really tricky situation because I said this last week. I didn't really hate the move because I thought Vardy had a good fixture. And look, he probably should have come away with at least one return in that game against Crystal Palace, but he didn't. And now that has made it look worse, right? And that happens sometimes. A lot of people, when they think about players, what to do, whether to keep, sell, etc., a lot of it's on recency bias. What did they do in the last game? If Vardy had got a goal, right, even if he got one goal and no bonus, I think people would be less worried about going back to Kane. Now, the thing is with this move is Kane has Sheffield United at home and Leeds away. Now, for me, I haven't done the captaincy video yet. I'm going to wait to see all the stats. But I would imagine that Kane's right up there in terms of top captaincy pick, even if not the top pick for Sheffield United at home. But there are other options, notably Leicester against Southampton away. So Iheanacho, Vardy right up there for captaincy as well. And if Kane's fixture's good, Son's fixture's also good. And so he could be a captain too. The thing with Kane is we don't quite know what his fitness is like. He did come back for the EFL Cup final. He played the whole game, but he didn't really have to do a massive amount of running because City had the ball for so long. So we didn't really get tested with too many sprints or anything like that. So we're not quite sure. So we're going to have to wait and see what Ryan Mason says. And like I said, Sheffield United at home, Leeds away, Wolves at home, Villa at home, Leicester away. As fixtures go, they're not perfect, but they are very good for Kane. So I can see why people want him back. The thing is, if you take into account game week 35, right, let's say that's a double, and then Leicester are going to blank in 36, then Vardy would have Southampton away, Newcastle at home, which, to be fair, Southampton away and Newcastle at home is probably quite comparable to Sheffield United at home and Leeds away in terms of fixtures. But Vardy also gets Man United away. Now, that's not easy, but it is an extra fixture. And then if that happens, again, if the double happens in 35, then 36 will be a blank for Leicester. That would be the perfect time to swap back to Kane because you've got Wolves, Villa and Leicester to finish the season, whereas Leicester would have blank Chelsea, Spurs. So it's not quite as good. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. You don't strictly get an extra fixture out of Vardy because you're going to have to use a transfer on him at some point anyway. So don't tell yourself that Vardy has an extra fixture because he loses it potentially in 36 where Kane has one. So over the next 3 weeks, whatever happens, they've both got 3 fixtures. So at some point, you're probably going to want to make the move. A lot of it comes down to whether you think Kane is the absolute best captain. For me, and this is easier to say when I don't have to do the move because I've already got both of them, I think I would just see it out with Vardy and just hope for the best and just captain someone different this week. Because in game week 35, if it is a double, Kane's not going to be the top captain for that week. Arguably, Vardy will definitely be better. And then you can maybe make the move in 36. A lot of this is going to come around, to your transfer strategy, what moves, because you might have other moves you need to make in 36, and maybe it's just easier to do one now. I would be tempted to keep and hope for the best. But it is a hope because if Kane starts and he's fully fit, that is a great fixture. Vardy to Iheanacho, I wouldn't do this, personally, unless you need the money, right? Because I know Iheanacho has been so good, but yes, he smashed Vardy last week. The week before, Vardy outscored him, right? Don't forget that. He got 12 points. I think Iheanacho got 6 or something like that. I don't think he got any bonus. So Vardy can outscore him, and he's on penalties. And again, with Leicester, you've got good fixture in 34, good fixture in 35, regardless of whether it's a single game week or a double. And then you got 3 poor fixtures. So the thing with Iheanacho is great value. So you could argue a case to keep him for 36 to 38. But there's probably going to be better options, right, who have better fixtures. So they're not really long-term holds. So for the sake of 2 game weeks, again, I would probably hold on to Vardy and just, again, hope that he will outscore Iheanacho. I'm not sitting there telling you he's a better option than Iheanacho, right? We've all seen how good he is. His current streak of goals is amazing. His stats are really good. They're actually, non-penalty stats are actually better than Vardy for this season now per 90 minutes. But Vardy still has the penalties, and they can easily swing a result, especially over a small sample size of just 2 games. So if you need the money, then yes, Iheanacho is much, much better value, and you can spread that money around elsewhere. But you're making a move for 2 game weeks, and then for the last 3, I don't think these 2 are going to be massive deciders in how big our green arrows are, basically. So Vardy to Kane, Vardy to Iheanacho. I'd probably hold Vardy in most scenarios. A lot of people considering getting Coleman in. So fixtures, again, if there's a double in 35, it's Villa at home, then West Ham away, Villa away, Sheffield United at home, Wolves at home. They're pretty good fixtures. One thing I would say about Everton is, they've been one of the worst defences this year. Now, again, I'm talking about expected data. It's nothing against Everton, right? I'm just looking at the numbers here. So they are 1, 2, 3, 4. They're the 7th worst defence for non-penalty expected goals conceded, right? The only teams worse: Newcastle, Burnley, Palace, Leeds, West Brom, Sheffield United. Defence isn't good. The fixtures are quite good, and they might have a double. If you're in a situation with no free hit, I could see why you might want to go there because you don't have to worry about taking them out. They're going to play in every single week, and they are some pretty good fixtures. So I think as punts go, Coleman's pretty decent. I'm just having a look here. How much has he been playing recently? So he didn't start against Spurs. I think they might have started 4 centre-backs, but he does start more often than not. Is he going to play both games in the double? Maybe a slight concern over that. Everton fans, let me know in the comment section below. But he is 4.8. In general, I quite like the idea of an Everton defender. If it has to be Coleman, so be it. But Luka Dean's probably the one, right? If you've got 6.1 to spend. Last one, really quickly now. Fernandes to Son. Again, for the reasons I said earlier, I don't think I'd be doing it. If Man United get a double in 35, you're going to want Fernandes. Then you're not going to want him for 36, and that would be the better time to make the move. If you've got the free hit, then Fernandes to Son is great because you get Son for Sheffield United at home, and then if there is a double in 35, you just pop the free hit and you can get back whoever you want, and then just go without Fernandes for the rest of the season possibly. So this is not a move I would do early. I would want to try and wait for as long as possible and hope we get news. But because of that double, I'll be super tempted to keep and just hope that you can get something against Liverpool. Well, I know this one's been long, but we have fit a lot in. So I'm going to go through the Q&A. Again, I've just realised I've put time to sell Bruno Fernandes. Obviously, I just talked about him as a specific move to Son. In general, I wouldn't do it. The stats have actually looked pretty good. I know it's frustrating if you've held on to him and he's not got those points, but the chances of a double for a player that's got penalties, for Man United, who are one of the best attacking teams in the league, I just wouldn't do it in general, let alone for Son. Jota, stick or twist? I think it's stick. If you think he gets enough minutes over the last kind of 4 or 5 matches, like if he gets 3 to 4 starts over the last 5, like if he gets bench versus Man United, that's almost good because then he gets more minutes in the better games. So I don't know if there's too many players around his price that are much better options. I kind of talked about this already in the transfers video, but Maddison's having his minutes managed a bit. Greenwood's not guaranteed to start either, in my opinion. Lingard possibly. But I think if Lingard and Jota got the same minutes to the end of the season, I think Jota will outscore him. So I don't think he's worth a transfer, but it's up to you. Offloading double Chelsea. I've kind of covered all this, haven't I? Offloading Chelsea defence. Yeah, I would start to think about it. I don't think you need to rush to do it because Fulham at home is such a good fixture and you'll probably be transferring out a clean sheet. But I think it's something to think about. Best goalkeeper for 34 to 38. I'm not seeing a better goalkeeper than Martinez because you know he's going to start. He's got a double. He's got no blank. The fixtures aren't that bad. I will say, a bit like Everton, Villa defence isn't very good. Like they're the 8th worst defence, so they're just one step below Villa. But they've got Everton, then a possible double, then Palace. And part of the double would also include Everton. And the last 2 fixtures are Spurs and Chelsea, but he can be good for saves as well. Like the other ones you got are like Leno. But I would be so worried about it now he's got 1 bench and who knows that he doesn't get another one. Mendy, okay, but Chelsea's fixtures are coming to an end, like the really good ones, and he's been rested too. Pickford, but what if Olsen plays? So I think it's Martinez. Let me know in the comments below because I've said that for a few weeks now, and I feel like I may be missing someone. Obviously, if you can go to Edison or someone like that, possibly because the City's fixtures are quite good, but he's quite pricey. So I think it's Martinez. But let me know below. Starting Liverpool versus Man United players. As always, just choose the best player for your team. If you've got Bruno Fernandes, it would take a lot for me to bench him, and I wouldn't do it against Liverpool. But I am benching Jota, and instead, if he's fit, I'm playing Rafinha against Brighton and Lingard against Burnley. I think that's a fair call, but I'm not going out of my way to do it. It just so happens that I think I've got 2 better players. Shaw's probably okay. Trent, I'm playing as well. Bruno Fernandes, I would definitely play. I don't know who could you possibly be benching ahead or put in on the bench. Starting ahead of Bruno Fernandes. There can't be too many players, right? Wolves defence really quickly. West Brom away. I wouldn't panic about Wolves defence just yet, although that Burnley game was awful for them. I think their good fixtures are starting to run out anyway. So I think you hold for West Brom and then you reassess. If you can make a good move this week, then do it. But I'd probably hold if it was me. But there we go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. So close to that 150k. Long video, that one, but there was a lot of stuff packed into it. I wanted to talk about the doubles and blanks. Got a lot of questions about that. So yeah, hopefully you found it useful. Leave me a comment below if you've got any other questions or points that you want to kind of debate, like best goalkeeper and stuff like that. Differentials, if you've got any others that I've not considered. All that good stuff, leave it below. And lastly, if you've not already checked out Patreon, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. Link to that in the description if you want to support me and the channel a little bit further than just watching, liking, subscribing and all that good stuff, then you can. Link in the description below. I'll leave it there. I'll be back with team selection tomorrow. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.